Welcome back to the Domestique Cooldown. We have just finished watching Stage 7 of the Tour de France 2025, 197-kilometre stage from Saint-Malo to Mur de Bretagne. The stage was hotly contested from the start, one of the quickest first hours in Tour de France history, I think the stat was. And we had a big fight for the breakaway, which was driving up that pace. The riders that ended up making it into that breakaway after a little over an hour of racing, I think, were Geraint Thomas, former Tour de France winner, who is not someone that I picked to be in the breakaway for today, that's for sure. Ivan Garcia Cortina from Movistar, Alex Bourdin from EF Education First, and Ewan Costu from Arkea, and Marco Haller from Tudor. They worked pretty well together. Their pace dropped off a little bit once there was that calm period, but they were never really given much of a leash, mostly controlled by Alpecin, who were clearly trying to keep things together for the yellow jersey, and it's a pretty good look when you've got the yellow jersey to have the whole team on the front. That was then taken over by UAE, coming into the climbs in the last hour of the stage, and we kind of saw the breakaway just disintegrate. Marco Haller suffered what looked to be possibly a career-threatening cramp by how badly it affected him, because he dropped pretty swiftly back to the peloton from there. And then the four other riders left from there basically just stopped working together and started whacking each other, which we'll get to a bit later as well. But the cooperation died off a little bit, and the pace from behind meant that they caught the sole survivor, Ewan Costu, shortly after the first ascent of the Mur de Bretagne, which was absolutely packed with fans, by the way. Love seeing the Bretons get about the cycling races, because they are cycling mad in that part of the world, and great to see the Tour de France respecting that and racing in that part of the world. There was a pretty reduced group after the first time up that ascent, and inside the last 10 kilometres, we had a pretty nasty crash, which we're just waiting to get the details on at the moment, of injuries to those riders. Joao Almeida looked to be the worst of it, so we're just waiting to see if he shows up on the result sheet during this. It then came into the final ascent of the Mur de Bretagne, where we saw basically a select group of GC favourites contesting the win on this punchy uphill climb, around 2K of, I think it's 9% average, but there's a good stint in the middle of 15%. It was led out by Jonathan Narvaez for Tadej Pogačar to take the sprint win, which he has been sprinting very well recently in these kind of finishes. Wasn't really a surprise. Aidan, that was your tip for the day. And then we'll
get to that.
We'll get to that then.
Yeah.
All right. And then in second place, we had Jonas Vingegaard, who was also your tip for the day. So that might be what we're getting to. And then Oscar Onley came through for a very respectable third.
Yeah. So takeaways from the day, I think there must be a couple of teams that are listening to this podcast, which is really cool, because Arkea, Ineos, and FDJ were all in the mix today. Arkea had a fantastic stage after you got stuck into them about their lack of effort yesterday. They were everywhere. I don't know if you saw sort of the final bunch, but they were the same representation as UAE and Visma, which was crazy for a team that is, my understanding is Arkea are kaput after this season. I think it's pretty much gone.
It's their home race. The Breton team, Arkea and BNB, are both companies from Brittany. My thing is, their sports director, I hope, has just given them an almighty rev up on the team bus in those. If you've watched the Unchained documentaries on Netflix, the passion in the French team DS rev ups before the stage, the vocabulary they use, it is just crazy how romantic they make the sport sound, and how many it is really life or death in their eyes. But I'm imagining that he's got on there and said, right, we've got everyone in Brittany watching this stage. This is the stage. We finish on Mur de Bretagne. If we do something here, we can jag a big sponsor in Brittany, and you guys all get a contract next year. So I don't know how much of that's true, but that's my guess, is what has happened. Something along those lines of let's make a big showing here. This is our home race. This is our home stage. Yeah, they didn't pull off the win at the end, but they did look bloody good all day. Incredible ride from Ewan Costu, because he would have probably been the smallest name in that break. And he's the one that you think, okay, he'll just ride along with him and then get dropped once it starts going hard. And he was the best of them. And then, yeah, for the team to be that well represented at the end was also very impressive. And yeah, they ended up with 7th with Kevin Vauquelin at the end of the day, who you could tell he was absolutely spent. And if you look at the guys that finished in front of him, it's still a pretty damn good result as well.
But the crazy thing, I'm just having a look at GC at the moment, and Vauquelin is in 3rd. Yep. So that's amazing for Arkea. And, you know, they would have been wanting the stage win, but I think if you had told Arkea that at the end of today they would have a rider 3rd on GC, I think they'd be pretty chuffed with that result.
Yeah, I think so as well. And yeah, like they'd be looking at their first 7 stages now. We're a week into the tour, which is crazy, but they'd be looking at. I think they'd be pretty happy. Like, yeah, I did give them a bit of stick yesterday, and clearly they've they were, as I said, one of my hypotheses for why they did absolutely nothing yesterday was that they were just saving their bickies for today, and must have worked, because yeah, they were everywhere, which is good to see.
Yeah, you might have been onto it there. So the other thing that I noticed, which I think is scandalous, after having a huge sook yesterday about the fact that Visma was trying to get Tadej back in yellow so that he had to do all of those extra interviews, Wellens today is wearing the polka dot jersey.
Yeah.
And I think they might have been trying to make Jonas wear the polka dot jersey so that he had to do the interviews, because otherwise I can't understand why he wouldn't be in the the Belgian.
Yeah, I don't know why he was actually. Well, no. So Wellens was leading the KOM, which is why he was wearing the jersey.
Sorry, true. Yep. Good point.
But even if Jonas were to be wearing it as caretaker, he wouldn't have to do the interviews. So it's whoever's actually leading the classification has to do the interviews. It is fun. There was a bit of beef there in terms of, I sort of guessed it yesterday that Jumbo were trying to bring it back for so that Poggy would have to do the interviews and so that he'd be back in yellow. And then, so that he would stay in yellow. And then Visma Leasebike came out and said, no, we actually are really happy that he's not in yellow. We don't want him to have it. So I don't know how much of that is true, but it's funny that there's been so much talk around that, when at first I just guessed, I was just sort of poking fun at it and not thinking that it was actually the rationale behind them getting on the front. But it is really interesting that that's such a big deal, having to spend that extra hour at the presentation, getting up on stage and collecting some soft toys and then going to do some interviews, that it's something that people want to avoid that much.
But then something that they had such a big sook about yesterday, and then Poggy goes and gets the win today and is in yellow and has to go and do all the interviews. So I think it must have been, like, I don't think they're necessarily upset about Poggy having to wear the yellow jersey. I feel like they're upset because they think it's not in the spirit of the sport or something along those lines, I guess.
Yeah, possibly. But I think at the end of the day, like, you can see they're still just, they're not willing to risk seconds because of, like, risk someone else taking an actual rival taking seconds, that is. They're quite happy for Mathieu van der Poel to sit in yellow because despite Mathieu asking if he could hold it till Paris in one of his Instagram posts, his 1 second lead. Yeah, they're not too worried about that. But at the same time, they're not going to give up 3 seconds to Jonas Vingegaard just so that he can get the bonus seconds so that Poggy doesn't have to go back into yellow. It's a very small thing on the agenda. It's just something that has been talked about a bit in the last few days. One thing that I noticed in terms of GC contenders is Remco is back looking really good. The reason I noticed this first is that he stopped to take a piss as riders were all getting dropped. So I just tuned in and saw, well, I looked away for about 30 seconds, looked back, and Remco's off the back, and I thought, oh no, this is tour done. What's going on here? Like, only sprinters have just started getting dropped. Why is Remco already getting dropped? Then saw, like, just heard the commentary, okay, he's coming back from a nature break, that's fine. And then thought, hang on, there's 50 or 60 riders getting dropped at the moment, and he's just decided to take a nature break so that he can then cruise his way back. And I don't think his teammate would have been too stoked with having to pace him back at that point of the race. But clearly he's feeling really good. Also on the last climb, he just went to the front and started ripping it, which I think
He did.
Tactical blunder on his part, because it cost him at the end. He's actually shown pretty recently that he's got a pretty decent punch at the end, where he could have possibly taken it to those guys if he'd saved a little bit on that last climb. He clearly wanted to test the legs, feeling pretty good, wanted to see if there was any chinks in the armor of the other two big names, which there wasn't. But good to see that he's clearly got the confidence after that TT the other day, and yeah, he's ready to get stuck in, I think.
Yeah, and on that as well, like we're talking about, you know, if Poggy didn't take the win today, Jonas was second, and for a second, like a very small second, I did dare to believe that Vingegaard might actually be able to get over the top of Poggy in that final sprint.
He was running at the wheel, that's for sure.
Yep. Yeah, I think if it was a little bit longer, potentially. And again, after sitting there and saying maybe he's not all that hot this year, yeah, that looks pretty decent. And maybe it is true that his TT was an anomaly, and I certainly hope it was, because what we saw today with Remco, Jonas, and Poggy all coming to the line together and whacking each other, not for a long period of time, but throwing a couple of punches, it was really fun to watch.
Yeah, definitely. And like, I think we're going to have a battle on our hands regardless. And the thing is, we're talking seconds at a time. The TT was a minute, but once we get into the mountains, like the difference between a good and a bad day is 3, 4, 5 minutes. Well, Poggy's bad day a few years ago was 7 or 8, I think. So like, it's always like this. We love when the tour is set up this way. I personally, that was another thing I wanted to add. I love watching the racing in the north of France. As a rider, I also love racing in the north of France because it sort of generates that chaos. A lot of riders don't like it. I don't know how many GC riders particularly would like it, just because of the traffic furniture, the constant twists and turns through villages, the difficulty in keeping it calm and controlled compared to other areas to race. But the beauty is it just sets up, we get these little tasters every day of, oh, is this person going a little bit better than this one? Is this person going a little bit better than this one? Rather than just ripping the Band-Aid off and going straight into a mountain stage, which the last few years, just because of starting in Italy and Basque Country and some other really hilly places, you can't avoid having a mountain stage early in the tour, which some people love. But for me, I like just this anticipation and these little glimpses of how everyone's going.
At the moment, this first week of the Tour de France has felt like the Spring Classics shoved into a week. And it's been really fun.
That's cool.
It's been, I've really enjoyed. I am ready for a rest day so that we can go to bed and not have to worry about the tour. But yeah, I am. I've really enjoyed this. So there are a couple of other things that I just wanted to point out. So I don't know if you were listening when the EF car came on, but the sports director for EF, I don't know who's in the car at the moment, but they said two things. And number one was coming into, or with the breakaway, the advice that came over was just to remember that the break's only going to get away if the peloton lets them. So don't blow yourself up on the front trying to get this break to happen, because the only reason it's going to happen is if you're let go. I thought that was really cool advice, and probably something that I should take on. I'm always in crits, just trying to throw every bullet away to try and get my breakaways going. And really the only reason a breakaway gets going is if people can't be bothered chasing at that time. And the other one was coming into the sprint. just to remember that they're not going for the sprint, they're going for what's coming after. So to save energy and just make sure that it doesn't split up after. And I thought that was just, you said we'd heard some silly stuff from some of the sports directors in the car about positioning. And I thought it was really cool to hear a DS that clearly has their head screwed on and is giving some pretty good advice in there.
Yeah, that's so that DS, the head DS for EF is Charlie Wagelius. I didn't see the clip, but I'm going to assume it's him if it was before the break went. And then their DS that they've got following the breakaway, their second DS is Tom Southern, who he.
So that would be him. So it'd be Tom because it was when the break was away.
But both awesome DSs. So I had when I was doing a stagiaire with EF, I had the pleasure of riding for underneath those guys multiple times, while having them as a DS. But yeah, both really good, really knowledgeable guys, really good with that tactical stuff, which a lot of DSs are awesome with the nuts and bolts. We've got a turn at this point. This point, you're going to have a crosswind over this shoulder. But those two are really switched on for that. And I think it really pays off in those kind of situations for EF. The funny one, like you said, with it's not the breakaway that decides whether the break goes. It's the peloton, which is pretty commonly said. I had it said to me literally 2 days ago when I was trying to pull a breakaway here in this race by someone else. But there's certain riders actually where that doesn't stack up. One was a few years ago. Thomas de Gendt was just like, I think he just made every breakaway that he wanted to be in a Tour de France, and it was just, I think someone put out a tweet, I can't remember who it was now, saying it's not the peloton that decides whether the breakaway goes, it's Thomas de Gendt that decides whether the breakaway goes. And there's a few riders like that, like Jonas Abrahamsen from X is another one. He was trying early today as well, wasn't successful, but there's a few guys that just, if they get on and rip it, Victor Campenaert's another one, that like basically if they decide that they really want to go, it goes. But still today, a lot of those guys are actually trying and not successfully able to get away. So it is very much, with those fights for breakaways, it's a tactical battle in terms of not expending too much energy, thinking that this is definitely the one I need to absolutely rip it now, getting caught, taking 20 minutes to recover, and then missing the one that actually goes, when you could just sort of half-ass it a little bit, finesse it, get away, have a look around, see if the gap's opened up to 20 seconds, then rip it, or if it's getting closed down, you save it up, and then you can go again pretty soon, rather than having that long recharge time if you've ripped it too hard while the peloton's just chasing you down full gas.
Totally. Did you have anything else that you wanted to chuck in that you sort of noticed today before we move on to our next segment?
No, there's nothing in particular that I noticed. I just thought we should run through the jerseys before we forget. So the youth jersey is still Remco. KOM jersey still Wellens by 1 point over Pogačar now. Points jersey, Pogačar's flown back into the lead ahead of Milan, but Milan will be wearing that in tomorrow's stage regardless. And then the GC didn't see any major changes today apart from Almeida, which while we're recapping, I'm just going to look if we have seen him come in across the finish line. I can't see him on the results sheet, so hopefully no issues. But no, nothing else there. Did you want to go to Domestique of the Day?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a couple here. So my first one, this one's sort of in my head. Actually, this segment, the Domestique and the Dickhead of the Day, is from the moment I start watching, these are the things that I'm paying attention to. So the first one that I noticed was Simmons coming into one of the intermediate sprints, attacked, drew an Intermarché rider into an attack, and then just pulled off that attack and let Milan go over and take the points. And I thought that was some pretty good work by Domestique, sort of playing a bluff to get that Intermarché rider to jump early. And then Milan was able to go over, and it looked like Milan was pretty rooted and wouldn't have been able to get that by himself. So probably some tactics going on there. But
I think
just interesting.
He opened up quite early because of that. Yeah. That was a Cool. I did notice that as well. I don't know how intentional it was, to be honest, because Simmons didn't look around that much while he was doing it. But if it was a set play, then that's awesome. And also Simmons as well just kept bobbing up later on as well. So I think he's.
I'm with you. I don't know, but like the fact that he dropped off obviously meant that at one point he realised, oh, hang on, got to give these points to Milan. So Bourdon, Healy crashes, and Bourdon waits for Healy to get back up and then pulls Healy back, and Healy ends up crossing in 26th, which for someone that's been in the break all day to go and do that, I thought that was pretty impressive. So they're my two domestiques of the day.
Yeah, so for me, it was really tricky. I'm also jumping on and thinking, okay, I've got to look out for these two things. The issue is every time I jump on, it's one of the same three guys basically on the front. So Dillier again today, I thought, well, I've got to pick him again today. But tricky because it's the same guys. Then Poet does a massive pull. Then we've got Campenarts pulling into the harder sections. Then Benoot again. Narvaez's doing another lead out. Almeida as well, sniffing around and helping wherever he can until he binned it there. Which, by the way, I just looked and Almeida did cross the finish line. So we hope he's okay to start and continue the rest of the tour.
I didn't see him in the... sorry, go on. Yep.
My one for today is, despite it not being on the front of the peloton or anything crazy, was Pascal Incorn for stopping to wait with Remco while he pissed and then bringing him back to the peloton after that. And then Remco cracked the shits at him for bringing him back a little bit too quick, which clearly that's when I worked out Remco was feeling pretty good because he didn't he wasn't in a rush to come back at all when everyone else was getting dropped. But for me, that was always, and I'm sure I'll have to do it again at some point, it's my least favourite thing, having to wait when someone takes a piss, because you should just be able to piss off the bike if you're a professional cyclist. And if you can't do it, just practice doing it at home. So for me, that's annoying when you're a rider having to help someone for absolute, like a mechanical, fair enough, completely out of your control. Sitting on the front to drag someone into a position, to a difficult part of the race in good position, that's completely fine. Doing that work to stop when someone takes a piss is just something that's completely avoidable if they just learn to piss off the bike while they're riding. So for that, I'm giving Pascal Incorn my domestique of the day.
Fair enough. So then we move on to the dickhead of the day. And do you want to take this one first?
Yeah, so my one's going to be a rider today rather than a spectator or sports director. My one is Ivan Garcia Cortina. Don't know what he was doing in the break, to be honest. There, he's working well with them for the majority, and then the time gap started coming down. They were really ripping it because the peloton started pulling really hard, and the gap was around a minute at that point, and then the gap was slowly getting bigger as the peloton was increasing the pace. And I thought, hang on, these guys have actually got a chance here. They're all really committed. Then Garcia Cortina goes for an intermediate sprint, which, don't know why he needs the points. He's nowhere near the points jersey. I double checked that. Like, yeah, a tiny little bit of prize money, probably less prize money there than he would get than we're getting for our intermediate sprints here. None of those riders care about that. And then sprints to the other side of the road, so none of the other riders are getting a sit, and then just keeps going, like rather than sitting up or just pulling a big turn for the other guys to sort of say, hey, thanks for letting me take that. No one else is contesting it. And then it comes back together. They go again. And then the start of the KOM, the first KOM of the final 20K there, he just rips a massive attack, blows Geraint Thomas out the back. And then about 500 metres later, he's gone himself, just completely cooked, just sits up and he's done. So don't know what was going through his head. And at that point also, I was thinking if those four go to the line, which is unlikely, but if they did, he's the quickest sprinter of those four. So for me, dickhead of the day, I'm sure there's some rationale behind. Well, I hope there's some rationale behind it, but it did nothing other than just split up the breakaway and basically destroy their chances of getting to the finish. Who would yours be?
I think it was probably just a bit of frustration. I think he knew the break was cooked. Like at that point, I think they were 45 or 50 seconds, and I don't know, maybe no guts, no glory sort of thing. I had two, and the first one was me for calling this as a sprint stage yesterday when I think the sprinters ended up finishing about 8 minutes down on the peloton. So that's mine. I'm happy to own that. So when you were saying, I think this was your tip and then this was your tip. No, my tip was, I think Wellens or something. Oh, no, sorry. Merlier, I think it was.
Yeah, okay.
So, yeah, that I'll own that. I'll put my hand up and say, yep, that was fucking stupid. And then my other dickhead of the day, and I hate giving dickhead of the day to riders when it comes from something like a crash, because I feel like you sort of but you know what? Eddie Dunbar crashed himself by putting his brakes on too hard. And I'm sure that happens a lot more. But when the crash happened up the hill, I saw it and I thought, hang on a second, Dunbar didn't touch anything there. And so they showed the replay, and sure enough, he's seen the crash happening. He slammed his brakes on too hard, and he's gone over the handlebars on his own bike. So because
we've
he was
all done
able to
it
get
at
up,
some point, but
yeah. But because he was able to get up and he kept riding, I feel okay with saying I think today Eddie Dunbar is my dickhead of the day.
Well, he did crash
because
again. He crashed in the one on the downhill as well, though.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but he's fine. He crossed the line,
Good.
but he's managed to have 2 crashes in 10K there.
Well, he's probably earned it twice then. Whoever's bleeding his brakes must be doing a pretty good job.
Yeah, he's not known for staying on his bike for too long at a time, but yeah, that's fair. I don't think he brought anyone else down either of the times, but
he didn't. He was right at the back. So, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was right at the back. The only thing that I wanted to throw in, because I meant to talk about it before, we were playing a game called Where's Wout, and I think Wout's back, baby. He was featuring a bit there.
Yeah, he was super active at the start.
And the same yesterday with trying to get brake connection. Sorry, not connection. I think my internet's... Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're back. Yeah, you're back.
Yeah. Yeah, yesterday as well at the start, he was really active. And again, it didn't work for him either time. But he was also there just going through pro cycling stats, because I didn't notice it. They've got it 6.9 kilometers to go. Wout van Aert moving up in the peloton. So, yeah, I mean, he seems to be back, which is good to see.
Yeah, he launched over the hill as well the first time. So just to put a bit of pressure on UAE to chase it down. So no, he's looking pretty good, and I think he'll be all set to do a big job in the next few weeks. Do we want to do the Giro first, the women's Giro, or jump preview tomorrow's stage?
No, we'll do the women's Giro. So I've got that covered. If you're happy for me to take this one,
yeah, go for it.
Yep, so it was a hilly stage with 3 categorised climbs, but there were some extra ones in there that kind of looked like maybe they did deserve. It didn't look like a 3. I think it was like a 3 and a 4 cat climb day, but it didn't look like there were only 3 categorised climbs. It looked like a harder day than I think that might suggest. I am in a WhatsApp chat with Amanda Spratt's dad, because he's in my local cycling group. And so he's regularly putting updates in, and he was very proud because Amanda Spratt was the one that pushed the break that included Reusser, Ruyakas, Lebu, Casasola, and Lippert. And she was dropped in the last 10Ks as Lippert and Ruyakas attacked, getting away. And then Lippert launched a sprint from Royaka's wheel in the last 200 meters and got over the top of her to win. So in stage 5, the top 5 at the moment is Lippert, Royaka, Van Aruij, Amruij, Smulders, and then Nguyen. And GC is Reusser. Longo Borghini is on 16 seconds. Van der Breggen is on 1:53. And Royakas has moved up to 4th on 2 minutes and 2. And Ellerud down to 5th on 2 minutes and 7. So it looks like GC is a battle between 2 people. Weavis is in the points jersey by a country mile, and I can't see that changing. And then Gigante leads the KOM by 4 points. And that is with Osterlaza, and they're the only ones in it. And Niedermeyer is the best young rider.
Yep. No, I did watch the final of that. Well, just the highlights because, as we've said multiple times, it's difficult to actually watch, unfortunately. But yeah, the pretty cool racing to just see. The thing I like about that is just the breakaways often have in the women's fields. The breakaways often have some of the best riders, which in Tour de France, obviously, we're getting breakaways with really good riders. Like Geraint Thomas is a Tour de France winner, but we see those long range breakaways in the women's peloton with someone like Liana Lippert, who would be one of the best riders in the women's peloton, full stop, and going long range like that to take those wins. So it is good racing to watch. Hopefully, we'll be able to watch it next year.
Yeah, it is fast becoming. If there is an option between the Tour de France and the Women's Giro, I am going to watch the Tour de France because it's the Tour de France. But a lot of the time with other races, if there's a women's race and a men's race, like for example, the Olympic races, if they're on at the same time, I think I'd probably pick the women's race to watch just because there is, I guess, more open racing in it. I actually think it's a really good product and it's only growing. I really enjoy watching it. So do you want to do the preview for tomorrow's stage then?
Yeah, so we've got 2 back-to-back sprint stages now, which is really weird for the Tour de France to do that on a weekend when everyone has all day to watch. For us, it's probably going to be great because we don't have to bother watching the middle section of the stage. And I've just checked and there's no crosswinds for tomorrow. But the riders will be pretty happy to have a cruisier day. I really hope, for the sake of the commentators, that at least some riders have a crack in the break and we don't have a repeat of a few days ago where everyone refused to go in the breakaway. So 171k from Saint-Maine-le-Grand to Laval, Espace Mayenne. And then, yeah, it's not dead. It's not pan flat. So 1,250 meters of climbing in 170k. So it's not a Netherlands flat stage or anything like that. That part of Brittany is quite rolly, so they're just going to be rolling quite nice roads. I can't see any major obstacles other than road furniture, as is the case in most parts of France now. So should be a big bunch sprint. For me, I'm tipping Tim Merlier. I think the Quick-Step team looks like they're pretty buoyed at the moment. They're all up and about. Remco's feeling good. The other guys haven't had to do as much because they seem to just check out of the last hour of these harder stages instead of being there to help Remco, because for the most part they're not able to be there. So I hope they're able to do something in the lead out for Merlier tomorrow, and I think he will take the win.
Yeah. I want to pick someone else, but with it being a slightly uphill sprint to the finish, I think it becomes a shootout between Merlier and Milan. I would love to say that Binny could get it, but he hasn't seemed that impressive this Tour de France. Like, he just doesn't look like he's at the level that he was last year, or perhaps alternatively, he's racing against a tougher competition this year than last year. And I don't want to take anything away from Binny's win, the green jersey last year, but 2 of the world's best sprinters, well, I would say the 2 world's best sprinters are here. And they're ready to fire and they've come in with really good form. So I will just split it down the middle and say that Milan will win tomorrow instead. Just let's see. That way we're not picking the same person, and then one of us can gloat over the other one.
And the way we're going, we'll both be very far off the mark anyway, so we'll be fine.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe the break will win tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll see.
I
guess last one to do is Tour of Qinghai.
Yeah. So fantastic. I was actually updating this in my Instagram stories because Cyrus went on a flyer today, didn't you, mate?
If you call an attack from 230k to go in a 232 kilometer stage a flyer, then yeah. Now we were humming along though around it. Well, this used to be called the Tour of Qinghai Lake, and we did quite literally do a lap of the lake, which is quite big. and quite high up, 3,300 meters. So I put some stats on my Instagram from our speeds, but I looked down after the first 30K in a 4-man break, and we'd been riding for 31 minutes. So average 58 for the first 30K, just with a tail crosswind and just very nice roads at high altitude. So we were humming along. We got out to 10 minutes at one point. So I had myself, another Aussie, Tarly Lane Welsh from the Cache body wrap team, and 2 big, strong Belarusians who get a lot of Belarusians here in China. And they were pretty happy to pull, and so were we. And it was just one of those breaks where everyone was never missing a beat. We got a lead of 10 minutes, which I, at that point, started thinking, all right, it's going to be a race of 4 people for the win here. And then we hit a block headwind, and some teams got a wriggle on behind, and we hit the final climb with just 3 minutes, which that rapidly evaporated. And yeah, we got caught just before the top of the final climb by some climbers that went past me like I was absolutely standing still, which by that point I was pretty close to standing still. Ended up with absolutely nothing other than a good day out and some very tired legs.
Yeah, well, I've got the maximum distance I think that you have between you and the peloton was something like 5 kilometers, and the average speed for the first hour of the race was 53 kilometers per hour. Now, I'm not sure whether that's from the breakaway or whether that's the peloton, but an insanely fast time. And yeah, as a result, the race finished a lot earlier than any of us were expecting. And yeah, Astana ended up getting over finally. And I think that's one of the reasons why you guys got caught so quick. I think someone was on the back of Astana cracking some whips. And yeah, so that went to Henrik Mullebrand from XDS Astana, who has been looking pretty frustrated and angry on the podiums the last couple of days. I've been very nervous sitting next to him because I was worried he'd chuck a bottle at me or something. So I was happy to see the bloke smiling on the top step today. It made for a much more comfortable podium for me.
Yeah, well, we got 2 stages left. I was hoping that today would completely sort the GC, and we'd have some chance for breakaways the next 2 days. But unfortunately, GC is still very tight between the top 2, and even there's still, I think, 10 guys within a minute. So unfortunately, going to be very hard for the break again to get anywhere. But I think tomorrow I am going to be a very low chance of being in any breakaways because I'm completely smashed. But the good thing is the Tour de France finished very early, so I might be a chance of getting more than 6 hours sleep tonight.
Yep. And with that, I think we should say that's a wrap and let you go and get some sleep. So
Yep.
cheers, Cyrus.
Cheers.
What we should do before we do, though, is if you have listened this far, we really appreciate you. And what we would like you to do, if you're watching on YouTube, can you hit the subscribe button? If you are listening in a podcast feed, can you go and subscribe to the Domestique podcast? And if you have been enjoying these, what would really help is if you could share it with your mates that are tour mad, or just go ask your mum or dad if you can borrow their phone and just go to their podcast app and click subscribe. And that would really help us. Yeah. And if you're doing anything on your friend's phone for whatever reason, just go to their podcast app and click subscribe. The more podcast feeds we can get into, the better for us and the better for the platform. So, yeah. I did also, just on, you were talking about the breakdown of stats. I did read that article. There was one about Healy and Simmons and their Strava data or their stats, and it was really interesting. So, yeah, there's some really good stuff going up on the Domestique platform. Would recommend you go and check it out.
Yep. Thanks, guys. Cheers for listening, and we'll catch you tomorrow.
Yep. Sounds good. See you, everyone.
Catch up.